The galaxy had been peaceful for eons. Countless civilizations rose and fell across the stars, but none had seen anything like what was about to arrive. Their sensors picked up the anomaly first, an unfamiliar signal rippling through the void, a frequency that resonated with an odd harmony, one that neither the Xelian traders nor the Vocarian engineers had ever encountered. It wasn't just a pulse or a transmission, it was a presence, and that presence was growing rapidly. The Council watched in awe as the readings flashed across their monitors. The ship was coming toward them from beyond the outer rim of known space. Its shape defied explanation. It wasn't spherical or angular, not even a typical organic design. It was something else entirely, something that seemed to phase in and out of existence, almost as if it was a creation of thought, a manifestation of will. The ship appeared to exist in several places, at once flickering between dimensions, as though it could not be contained by the laws of space or time. No one could say how it moved, yet its velocity was staggering, faster than any known ship in the galaxy. It tore through asteroid fields and nebulae as though they were nothing more than dust. Its power was evident. Its energy rippled outward, sending shockwaves that distorted gravity and light and left the surrounding stars flickering like dying candles. Across the council chamber, a silence fell over the room. They were not prepared for this. They had seen the might of countless civilizations and their advanced technologies, but this was something beyond anything they had ever encountered before. The ship's trajectory was clear. It wasn't heading for any of the outer colonies, nor the space stations of the galactic trade routes. It was headed straight for the heart of the galaxy, the very core where the central star burned brighter than all others, and there it would arrive, not in a blaze of destruction, but in a stillness that made the universe hold its breath. The Council quickly assembled, sending the fastest ships in their fleets to intercept, but all their attempts were futile. No weapon known to them could touch it, no shield or defense could withstand its presence. It moved with a calm that seemed almost unnatural, as if it knew no fear or resistance. The Elysium, as the humans called it, was coming, and its arrival was an enigma, one that could not be solved by the greatest minds of the galaxy. The fleet commanders tried to communicate, but the vessel remained silent, offering no answers, only an overwhelming sense of waiting, as though it knew something they did not. Its approach was inevitable, yet strange. The ships in its path were helpless, unable to gain any ground, as if the vessel itself bent space to its will. The Elysium didn't act like an invader or a conqueror. It didn't act like anything they had ever imagined. It simply was a force beyond their understanding, quietly drawing closer as the galaxy braced for whatever came next. The ship hovered at the edge of the central star's orbit, its energy washing across the galaxy in silent waves. Even now its nature remained unclear. The Council sat frozen in place, knowing that nothing would ever be the same again. The Elysium sat at the edge of the galactic core as the universe seemed to hold its breath in awe and fear alike. The Council had never encountered a vessel like this one. No race in the galaxy had the power to manipulate space itself to such an extent, and yet the humans aboard this ship had done just that. They made no move to communicate, no demands were sent, only a quiet waiting in the vacuum of space. The presence of the ship was a paradox. It did not threaten with weapons or force, but with something far more unsettling, an undeniable assertion of power. As the fleet commanders convened, they realized they had no strategy to deal with this unknown force. Their most advanced ships could not close the distance, nor could they even approach the Elysium without being repelled by its subtle yet immense gravitational field. Their weapons bounced off its shields like insects striking a wall. Their finest diplomats were rendered speechless by the silent hum of the ship's aura. It was as though the ship itself did not care to engage with them. It simply existed like a puzzle with no solution in sight. The Council's scientific teams pored over the data from their distant probes, but no analysis brought any clarity. The ship was not a machine nor a natural phenomenon. It was an amalgamation of something far more complex. As they observed the Elysium, it began to flicker faintly between dimensions, as if the ship was not entirely bound by the same rules of space and time that governed the rest of the galaxy. It was as though it moved between realities itself, sliding through different versions of existence, without ever truly existing in one place or time at once. The more they studied the ship, The less they understood, the readings grew erratic, oscillating wildly between impossible extremes. Some tried to calculate its trajectory, but the mathematics shattered into incoherent patterns that defied explanation. Their best minds could not grasp the true nature of the ship. It simply did not belong in their understanding of the universe. As the Elysium remained still in its hovering position, the galaxy began to feel its effects. The stars grew dimmer, as if their light had been absorbed by an unseen force. The space between them seemed to stretch and warp, distorting light and shadow across the galaxy itself. At the edges of the system, the tides of distant worlds began to shift, rippling through atmospheres and gravitational pulls. It was clear that this ship was far more than a mere vessel. It was a catalyst for a change that none of them could control, nor even comprehend. The humans aboard Elysium did not broadcast any messages. They did not reach out to the Council. They simply waited as the universe watched with bated breath. Not a single shot was fired, not a single word exchanged, yet the sense of change was palpable, like the calm before a storm. The Council debated endlessly, their voices filled with concern and curiosity. Some factions wanted to act quickly, sending more fleets to forcefully engage, while others argued that patience was their only option. One thing was certain: though this vessel from Earth was no ordinary craft, and the galaxy could never be the same again now that it had arrived. The Elysium hovered as if waiting for a decision from the galaxy to make its move. The question lingered in the air, like an unspoken challenge. What was the ship waiting for? What would it do next? The Council's chambers were filled with a tense silence as leaders from across the galaxy gathered to discuss the unprecedented event unfolding before them. The Elysium had arrived, but its purpose remained a mystery. The galaxy's brightest minds, diplomats, and military commanders had gathered in one place, each presenting their theories, but none had an answer that made sense. The humans aboard the ship made no effort to communicate, offering nothing more than an unsettling quiet that hung in the air. The only thing that was certain was that they were facing something far beyond their comprehension. Many believed that the ship was a weapon, but there was no immediate sign of aggression. Its mere presence, however, was enough to send ripples through the galaxy. Planets closest to its position experienced strange gravitational distortions. The very space around the Elysium seemed to warp and bend, as if the vessel were warping reality itself. The farther it moved, the more the fabric of space stretched. Stars flickered erratically, their light bending in unnatural ways, and even the most advanced sensors could no longer predict what would happen next. The Galactic Council debated fiercely. The Celian diplomats, known for their ability to find peaceful resolutions, were the first to speak up. "We must find a way to communicate with them," one of them suggested. "Perhaps they are seeking a diplomatic resolution. We cannot assume they are hostile without understanding their intentions." But the military commanders were less optimistic. "This is no ordinary ship," one of them argued. "We've seen its power firsthand. If they were here to negotiate, they would have already made contact. I believe we are facing a force that may be far beyond anything we can handle." As the debate raged on, a report came in from one of the outer colonies. The ship's arrival had caused strange disturbances in the colony's environment. Gravitational fluctuations were occurring at a scale never seen before, and a once stable star was now showing signs of instability. The Council's tension grew. If the ship's mere presence could cause such destruction, what could it do if provoked? Then, something unexpected happened. The ship began to send a signal, but it wasn't a traditional transmission. The frequency was unlike anything the Council had ever encountered. It resonated with a strange harmony, a series of tones and patterns that seemed to pulse in time with the very energy around them. No one could decode it, but it was clear that the signal was intended for the galaxy as a whole. It wasn't a message in words, but in an entirely different language, one of energy, of thought, of existence itself. "We're dealing with something beyond language," the Council's chief scientist said, his voice filled with wonder. "This isn't just technology, it's something else, a form of communication that transcends anything we've known." But what did that mean? Could the humans on board the Elysium even hear their responses? Or were they beyond such mundane methods of interaction? The council had no answers, but they knew that something had shifted in the balance of power. The galaxy had always prided itself on its advanced technology, its military might, and its diplomatic skills. But the Elysium was different. It didn't need to engage with them in the traditional ways. It didn't need to send fleets or make demands. Its presence alone was enough to shift the very structure of the galaxy. And so, the waiting continued. The council could only watch, knowing that every passing moment was leading them toward an unknown future. The question now wasn't what the Elysium would do, but what they themselves were willing to do in response. As the days stretched into weeks, the council found itself at a crossroads. The Elysium had remained motionless at the heart of the galaxy, and its silent presence was becoming more difficult to ignore. Despite the council's growing unease, no attack had come, no demands had been made. And still, there was no communication from the humans aboard the ship. They had not engaged in diplomacy, nor had they shown any sign of aggression. They had simply waited. The decision to take action weighed heavily on the minds of the council members. Some, like the Zenari representative, urged restraint. We are not the ones to make the first move. We do not know their intentions. They have shown no aggression, only an unyielding power that we cannot yet understand. It would be wise to approach this with caution, perhaps even to send a delegation to make peaceful contact. But the military leaders were growing impatient. Their presence disrupts everything. Our colonies are suffering from gravitational shifts, and entire systems are beginning to destabilize. We cannot afford to wait much longer, said Admiral Darren, one of the galaxy's most respected military commanders. We must engage, or we risk losing control of everything we've built. A third faction, the Arkan Order, a group of scientists and philosophers known for their deep understanding of the fabric of reality itself, had a different theory. The Elysium is not just a ship. It is something more, said Ilara, the head of the Arkan Order. It is a manifestation of human achievement, their potential. We have studied its energy field, its fluctuations in space-time. What we are seeing is not merely the presence of a vessel. This ship is a singularity, a doorway to something far greater. Her words hung in the air like a heavy fog. A doorway? The council's speaker asked. To what? Ilara's eyes gleamed with excitement. To the next stage of evolution. The ship represents a leap in human capability, a fusion of organic life and advanced technology. It has transcended the physical laws that govern us. The humans aboard it are not merely passengers. They are part of it, part of something far greater than any of us could understand. The idea of human evolution on such a scale was both unsettling and fascinating. The very thought that a species could evolve beyond the boundaries of the galaxy's current understanding made the council uneasy, but there was no denying that Elysium was unlike anything they had encountered. Just as the debate was about to turn into another round of conflicting opinions, a sudden shift in the ship's energy field interrupted the proceedings. A new signal, different from the ones they had previously detected, emanated from the ship. This time, it was clearer, more defined, yet still impossible to translate. It was a pulse, like a wave of energy that surged outward, carrying a sense of urgency of purpose. It was then that the true scale of the Elysium's capabilities became apparent. The pulse reached every corner of the galaxy, touching every star system, every planet. The council watched in awe and fear as the stars themselves flickered in response, their light bending and shifting as though they were part of a grand cosmic pattern. It was as if the galaxy itself was being reshaped, redefined, in the wake of the ship's presence. The message wasn't in words, but it was clear. This was not just an encounter with a powerful race. This was a turning point for the entire galaxy, and the Elysium was at the center of it all. The council had no choice now but to acknowledge that the ship and the humans aboard it were something far beyond their comprehension. What would come next, no one could say. But they all knew that the galaxy would never be the same again. The galaxy had never felt so small, As the pulse from the Elysium rippled outward, something shifted within the very fabric of reality itself. Systems that had once seemed stable were now unpredictable. Gravity no longer adhered to the laws the galaxy had known. Stars dimmed and flared. Planets experienced strange, sudden shifts in their orbits. The energy wave from the ship was more than a mere signal. It was a recalibration of the universe's most basic forces. Everything, from the tiniest atom to the largest sun, was altered. The Council scrambled to understand what had happened. The scientists and engineers were overwhelmed by the data flooding in. Nothing they had learned about the physical universe had prepared them for this. The Elysium was not just a ship. It was something that rewrote the rules of existence. As the effects of the energy pulse spread, the Council was forced to confront a terrifying truth. The Elysium had the ability to reshape the very laws of nature. And it was clear that the humans aboard were not merely passengers on the ship. They were the architects of this new reality. The more the Council studied the ship, the more they realized the implications. Its energy field seemed to alter the flow of time itself. Ships that ventured too close found their clocks moving erratically. Moments stretched into eternity, or collapsed into nothingness. Communications became unreliable, with messages either arriving before they were sent or delayed by days, even weeks. Nothing seemed stable near the Elysium, as though the ship's very presence caused time and space to become fluid and malleable. As weeks turned into months, the pressure on the Council grew. Their members were divided. Some still believed that the best course of action was to send a diplomatic envoy to the humans aboard the ship. Perhaps there was still a chance to engage with them, to understand what they wanted and why they had come. After all, they had not attacked. They had shown no signs of hostility. But others, including the military commanders, argued that the situation was too dangerous to ignore. "We cannot let this continue," Admiral Darren insisted in a tense council meeting. "We don't know what the humans on that ship are capable of. We don't know their motives, and they have already shown that they can manipulate the very fabric of reality. We can't afford to wait any longer. We must act." But the more cautious members of the Council were not convinced. "We are dealing with something beyond our comprehension," the Zenari diplomat replied. "We must not let fear cloud our judgment. If we act rashly, we risk making the same mistakes we have made with other species throughout history. We need to understand them, to understand what they want, before we do anything." The argument went on for hours, with no resolution in sight. Meanwhile, the Elysium remained in place, its power growing. The strange disturbances it caused in space-time only increased, and more planets were affected by the gravitational anomalies. Some systems began to experience odd shifts in their climates, while others saw entire ecosystems begin to break down. Entire moons were ripped from their orbits, and distant stars fluctuated wildly in brightness. It was clear now that the Elysium wasn't merely a powerful ship. It was a force of nature. And as the galaxy's leaders debated, they realized that the question was no longer whether they could understand it. The true question was whether they could survive it. And the humans aboard the Elysium, a species once considered primitive by galactic standards, had become the architects of this new reality. The Council's debates grew more urgent by the day. The situation had escalated beyond anything they could have predicted. The Elysium was not simply a ship. It was an entity of unimaginable power, and it had the galaxy on edge. The gravitational disturbances, the strange fluctuations in time, and the erratic behavior of distant stars had become increasingly frequent and severe. Entire sectors of the galaxy were beginning to feel the strain. Planets were experiencing violent tectonic activity, and previously stable ecosystems were collapsing under the unpredictable forces at play. The Elysium was not just a presence. It was a force that was beginning to reshape the universe itself. In the face of such an overwhelming power, the Council had no choice but to prepare for drastic measures. While some still advocated for diplomacy, the voices of caution were growing quieter. The military factions, led by Admiral Darren, had grown increasingly vocal in their demands for a more decisive response. This ship must be neutralized, he declared in a council session. We can no longer afford to wait. If we do not act, we risk losing control of everything we've built. But the scientific factions were not so quick to jump to conclusions. We are dealing with something far beyond anything we've ever encountered, said Ilara of the Arkan Order. It is not a weapon, nor is it a simple tool of destruction. It is something more. The Elysium is not here to conquer us, but to challenge everything we thought we knew about the universe. If we destroy it, we may destroy the opportunity to transcend to something greater. The council was divided, and time was running out. The longer they waited, the more the Elysium seemed to bend the universe to its will. Some systems had already begun to fracture under the strain, their very laws of physics unraveling. The question that loomed over the galaxy was no longer whether the Elysium would destroy them. The real question was what would happen if they didn't act. Desperation led to a decision. The Council agreed to send a delegation to board the Elysium and make direct contact with its human occupants. If diplomacy was to be pursued, this was their last chance to understand what the ship wanted, and perhaps to find a way to stabilize the galaxy before it was torn apart. A small, carefully selected team was dispatched. Among them was Kellen, one of the galaxy's most respected diplomats, and Xara, a leading scientist in the field of quantum physics. Together, they would venture into the unknown, hoping that the humans aboard the Elysium could offer some answers. As their ship approached the Elysium, a strange feeling of unease settled over the crew. They had crossed into a space where the normal rules of existence no longer applied. Time seemed to stretch and compress around them, and the very air felt thick with energy. The closer they got, the more they could feel the presence of the ship, a vast, almost living force that seemed to pulse with purpose. When they finally docked with the Elysium, they were met with an eerie silence. No guards, no armed forces, just the ship's strange energy, waiting for them. The human crew was nowhere to be seen, yet it was clear they were not alone. The very walls of the ship seemed to shimmer with the same energy that had warped space outside. The delegation moved cautiously, their senses heightened as they stepped deeper into the heart of the vessel. As they ventured further into the ship, they began to understand that the Elysium was not a machine. It was a living entity, bound by the thoughts and consciousness of its human occupants. And as the delegation approached the core of the ship, they realized that the humans themselves had transcended the boundaries of their physical bodies. They were part of the ship now, a fusion of organic life and advanced technology, existing as a singular, unified consciousness. The questions the Council had asked for so long, what the Elysium wanted, and why it had come, began to form in the minds of the delegation. And the answer, though not yet clear, was undeniable. The Elysium was not here to conquer. It was here to evolve, to lead the galaxy into a new era, one where the very limits of existence could be transcended. The galaxy was on the brink of something far greater than anyone had ever imagined, and humanity, once seen as a primitive species, was now at the center of it all. As the delegation stepped deeper into the heart of the Elysium, they began to understand the true nature of the ship. The walls around them were not solid. They seemed to pulse with an ethereal glow, shifting like liquid light. It was as if the ship itself was alive, breathing, reacting to their presence. The atmosphere inside the vessel was thick with energy, and the further they ventured, the more they felt an overwhelming sense of awe and fear. They had crossed a threshold, entering a space where the very rules of the universe seemed to bend and twist in ways they couldn't comprehend. The crew of the Elysium was nowhere to be seen, yet they could feel their presence, an intangible connection that seemed to permeate the very air. It was as if the humans had become part of the ship, their minds fused with the vessel's core, an inseparable union of organic consciousness and advanced technology. The Elysium was not just a ship. It was a singular being, and the humans aboard were no longer just passengers. They had transcended their physical forms and had become something far greater, something beyond the understanding of any species in the galaxy. Kalen and Sara, The two leaders of the delegation tried to make sense of what they were witnessing. They had come in search of answers, hoping to understand the purpose of the Elysium and its human crew. What they found instead was a form of existence that seemed almost beyond language, a communication that was not based on words or sounds, but on thought itself. As they moved deeper into the ship, they began to receive flashes of images, sensations, and emotions. It was as if the ship was speaking directly to their minds, bypassing the need for physical communication. The images they saw were both wondrous and terrifying. They saw glimpses of the human race, once primitive and scattered across their homeworld, growing, evolving, and finally reaching the stars. They saw humanity's endless drive to explore, to understand, to push the boundaries of what was possible. But they also saw something darker, a moment in human history when their reach had exceeded their grasp, leading to destruction and war. And yet, even in their lowest moments, humanity had found a way to survive, to rebuild, and to continue their journey toward the stars. The Elysium was a manifestation of that journey, the culmination of everything humanity had achieved and all they had become. But it was also a gateway, a bridge to a new form of existence, a new reality where the limitations of space and time no longer applied. The ship itself, and the humans within it, were not just advancing technologically. They were evolving beyond the physical realm, transcending into something more, something that could reshape the very fabric of the galaxy itself. The realization hit Kalen and Xara like a wave. The Elysium was not just here to observe, nor was it here to conquer. It was here to guide the galaxy towards something greater. Humanity had discovered a way to break free from the constraints of the physical universe, and had now returned to share that discovery with the galaxy. They were not the end of the road for the galaxy. They were the beginning of a new journey, a journey that would lead all species to a higher state of being. As the delegation stood in the heart of the Elysium, they could feel the ship's presence enveloping them, pulling them into a shared consciousness. It was not an invasion, nor an imposition. It was an invitation. The galaxy was being offered a chance to evolve, to transcend the boundaries of existence itself. And humanity, the species that had once been considered insignificant, was leading the way. But with this revelation came a question. Would the galaxy accept this new reality? Would they embrace the possibility of transcending the physical world, or would they resist, clinging to the old ways, afraid of what lay beyond? The Elysium had already begun its transformation, but the future of the galaxy, and of humanity, was yet to be written. The invitation had been made, and now the galaxy was at a crossroads. The Elysium had shown them a future that defied everything they thought they knew. Humanity had transcended its physical form, breaking free from the constraints of time and space, becoming something more, something beyond the boundaries of conventional existence. It was a vision of evolution, of progress, but it came with an unsettling question. Would the galaxy follow, or would it resist? As the delegation stood in the heart of the Elysium, feeling the shared consciousness of the ship, the weight of the decision began to settle upon them. The Elysium had not come to conquer. It had not come to demand submission or control. It had come to offer a path forward, a path toward something greater than the limitations of physical life. But for the galaxy, this was an unknown. The species of the galaxy had built civilizations based on tangible power, on structures they could see and touch. The idea of breaking free from the physical world, of embracing a form of existence that defied the natural laws, was terrifying. Back in the council chambers, the debate raged on. Representatives from every corner of the galaxy had gathered, all trying to process the implications of the Elysium's arrival. Some still believed that humanity had to be stopped, that the ship's influence could not be allowed to spread. Others, particularly the scientists and philosophers, argued that this was a moment of unparalleled opportunity. The Elysium was offering them a chance to evolve, to grow beyond the limitations of their physical selves. But fear and uncertainty loomed large. Would the galaxy embrace this new future, or would they reject it, afraid of what they couldn't understand? Callan, the diplomat who had stood at the forefront of the delegation, returned to the council, his mind weighed down with the enormity of what he had experienced. He had seen what the Elysium offered, and he knew that this was not just about humanity. It was about the entire galaxy. The Elysium was not just a ship. It was a gateway to a new reality. And as he stood before the council, he understood the gravity of the decision that lay ahead. "We have seen what they offer," Callan began, his voice steady but filled with the weight of the truth he now carried. "Humanity has transcended, yes, but they are not seeking to impose this upon us. They are offering us the opportunity to join them, to evolve and rise beyond our physical limitations. We are being invited to step into a new era, a new reality where the very laws of existence no longer bind us. The choice is ours." The council was silent. The words hung in the air like a heavy fog, the enormity of the decision weighing on everyone present. Some of the council members were already nodding, their faces filled with a mixture of fear and wonder. Others were less convinced. "What will we lose?" one voice asked. "Our identities, our cultures, everything we have built, everything we know." Callan paused, reflecting on the question. "It is true," he said slowly. "We will lose the things we know, the way of life we've built. But what we gain in return is something far greater. We have the chance to transcend, to become more than what we are, to be a part of something that defies the boundaries of the universe itself." And so, the decision was made. The galaxy, united in its uncertainty and fear, chose to embrace the unknown. They would follow humanity into this new reality, trusting that the Elysium was not an invader, but a guide. The future was uncertain, and the path ahead was unclear. But for the first time in the galaxy's history, they were willing to step beyond the known, to embrace the possibility of something far greater than they had ever imagined. The Elysium had redefined the galaxy's understanding of existence, and in doing so, it had changed the course of history. The journey of evolution had begun, and there was no turning back.